Hi, in this video we will be looking at the biological perspectives that influence the progression of talent into varying pathways. The first biological factor that I want to discuss is genetics, which play a very key role in the development of an athlete. There is a multitude of different genetical factors that influence an athlete. Some of these are height, weight, muscle mass, medical conditions, aerobic capacity and puberty. Focusing in on height, it is impossible to know how tall or small an athlete is going to be when they are younger. We can only make educated guesses about genetics. This is one of the biological perspectives that makes it hard to identify youth talent. You may have athletes that are genetically gifted and grow taller than others, providing them with a great advantage over competitors. This is often seen with basketball players, with a great advantage falling to the athletes that are taller. Or transferring this to the development of muscle mass. A great example of this being Adama Traore, a professional football player who clearly has genetic gifts at developing muscle mass, meaning he wasn't only identified to compete in professional football, but also had the offer to compete in other sports such as American football. This can be attributed to something known as epigenetics, and more specifically myogenesis, the formation of skeletal muscular tissue, and the whole process can lead to individual differences in appearance, physiology, cognition, and behaviour. Widman et al. 2019 stated the nature of these exercise-regulated signalling pathways creates changes to the skeletal muscular transcriptome, specifically during strength training, eventually leading to enhanced muscle protein synthesis. This is a biological factor that influences development pathways. However, the social and psychological factors can also be identified, creating a bio-psycho-social model that all link and intertwine. I will be discussing some psychological and social factors briefly in this video, but I will be exploring further in the future videos. Again, looking at epigenetics, it can be influenced by environmental factors, this identified as one of the social factors. A great example to acknowledge the environmental impact on the genetic structure of human beings is Kenyan runners who have had great success in recent years, achieving 90% of the world records in long and medium distance events, with them seemingly having genetic advancements specific to the environment they are in, such as body type suited for endurance running with slim lower legs, which allows for efficient energy use. Also, high altitude regions like the Great Rift Valley provide natural advantages for training due to lower oxygen levels at high altitudes, helping athletes build greater lung capacity and endurance, giving them an edge when racing at lower altitudes where oxygen is more abundant. Larson and Shield 2015 supports the idea that the environment plays a role in the success of Kenyan runners, stating those interested in understanding the dominance of Kenyan athletes have wondered whether the secret can be found in the socialization experiences and lifestyles of Kenyan children. An example being the effects of running to school as a child, impacts of living and growing up at high altitudes, and/or to the diet of these athletes. This concluding a key insight into the biopsychosocial model and its impact it has on each factor for Kenyan runners, how the social factor, in this case the environment they live in, is impacting the biological developments for athletes. Expanding the exploration into biological perspectives on talent development, the relative age effect can be seen as another clear biological impact. And this is about acknowledging the biological differences within an age group and the rates in which they physically develop, especially youth athletes. This is backed up by Watty et al. 2008, who defines the relative age effect as subtle age differences between those in the same annual age group, with the age differences referring to the biological differences we are acknowledging. For example, within a chronological school year, you will have students that are born all year round, some in September, the start of the year, and some born at the latter end of the year in July. This provides a 9-month gap between two athletes, nearly a whole chronological year between them, allowing for two athletes grouped together despite the gap that can lead to physical differences, with the older athlete having an extended period of time to physically develop in correlation to their age. Although a chronological year, 12 months, may not be a long period of time for development for adults, for children it can make a huge difference in the process of physical development. Helson et al. 2005 stated significant variation in academic and sports performance may arise because of differences in growth and development between those born early and late in the selection year. Although an age difference of less than 12 months may have little relevance for adults, it may be significant in children. This acknowledges and backs up the importance of the relative age effect in youth athletes' development. The relative age effect may result in performance advantages for athletes born at certain times of the selection year. This creates a false image in respect to an athlete's performance, emphasising bias towards the more physically developed athletes, rather than athletes that have more cognitive development and better technique. And when it comes to identifying talent, coaches and scouts will identify the more physically dominant athletes, mistaking their physical attributes at a young age for competence in sport. Another piece of analysis from Helson et al. 2005 suggested how extrinsic perception of athletes is more positive towards athletes born towards the start of the academic year. An example of this would be Cole Palmer. Cole Palmer at a young age didn't have any standout physical qualities, and he often complained to his dad about how he wanted to grow bigger. However, his father actually made him focus on developing his more technical side of the game, so later in his development age, when he's more physically dominant and similar to other athletes, he was able to actually compete, and it shows now as he's one of the best players in the Premier League. A solution to this problem around the relative age effect is biobanding, which groups athletes together regarding physical size rather than chronological age, eliminating any physical bias in performance of athletes, allowing athletes that are less physically developed to excel using technique. An example of biobanding in practice is AFC Bournemouth, a top-flight team that uses biobanding in their academy setup and see great value in not having bias towards the more physically developed athletes. And that brings us to the end of the biological perspectives. You can find more on Talent Pathways by watching future videos on this channel.